Hi, this is Jurgen Rasmussen. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis blog. This one is titled How I View Changework. It's about the frames that I operate out of and that I create with my clients to provide the weather, as Milton Erickson used to say, to provide a learning context where changes, both small and rather profound, are the most likely to happen. Now, in my experience, the whole idea of treatment and therapy and mental illness are misleading. Remember that human beings think in metaphors and frames, right? So if I use the word treatment, that's going to fire off associations of illness and cure and root causes and all that sorts of stuff in the client's thinking process. And if a client actually suffers from a medical disease, that's appropriate. But the clients that we see as agents of change generally don't. So look at, for example, medicine. You know, one of the main metaphors that seem to be kind of inherent in how doctors are trained to think is the body as a machine. The body as a machine. So if that's your main metaphor, then that's gonna view how you view your patients. It's certain things fit within that frame. Cutting, drugging, burning. These sorts of kind of roll the person onto the operating table, drive the car into the mechanic shop and fix the parts, That's the sort of thinking that fits within that frame. Now, of course, in terms of acute, trauma medicine and stuff like that, that metaphor seems to work quite well. But for example, relationships, meaning, subjectivity, emotions, thought processes. These sorts of factors don't really find a home within that body as a machine metaphor. So in terms of change work, my two most common frames are these. I say to clients, look, I know some people, I have some friends who are magicians and illusionists, and sometimes when I spend time with them, I feel like an idiot because they trick me with these sorts of tricks. And on some level, I kind of know that it's not quite what it appears to be. But I also feel kind of helpless and hopeless in terms of figuring this stuff out because I fall for the tricks because I don't really get how magic works. Now, psychological suffering is like magic tricks of the brain. They're like psychological magic tricks of the brain. So the way I work with a client is it would be a bit as if you could take a professional magician, go backstage, and have the magician guide you to discover for yourself how the tricks are actually done and the thinking behind them. Now you could design your own magic tricks. Now you would be less likely to fall for them quite as easily because you begin to understand the mechanisms at play. So when we work together, it's going to be you and I doing various thought experiments where I'm going to guide you behind the scenes and help you pull the rug, help you have an embodied understanding of the mechanisms, of the magic tricks of the mind. So it's about two things. It's about insight, really at the embodied level, getting how it works. And it's also a little bit about skill development, learning to become better at seeing thoughts as thoughts. So this is my main frame with clients. Another frame I very often use is I tell people, look, when I went to school, both American private school as a kid and also public school, in Norway, 100% of the attention was directed at the so-called outside world. So we learned a little bit about history, geography, mathematics, language. No complaints. That's all relevant and useful and necessary. But there was zero attention towards the internal world of meaning making and thoughts and feelings and memory and conflict and that sorts of stuff. It wasn't that it was downplayed, it was absolutely zero attention whatsoever. Now, doesn't that seem a bit nuts? Because what you're essentially teaching young people then is that either there really is no internal world, or the internal world has no relevance in terms of living a fulfilled life. It has no relevance in terms of education and profession and having a fulfilling career. That there's really nothing to learn, that it's not really relevant, or that it's not even worthwhile taking a look. Now, to me, this sounds insane, right? So as a result of this, most of us have a tendency to get lost in thinking processes. And when we do, it's often difficult to handle it in a skillful way. Not because we have broken brains or chemical imbalances, or that we're oppressed by some patriarchy or anything like that, but just because we don't get the mechanisms. We lack in education. Very few of us have really done an in-depth study or investigation of our own internal experience. So this particular work is about various thought experiments to help you do a thorough investigation of your own internal experience. Now, why would you want to do that? So one thing I may create a bridge for the client to get the relevancy of this is, let's say the client is a cop, or let's say that they're a martial artist, or that they're involved in some profession or some hobby that really matters to them. I may say, look, you ever notice that before you started doing this vocation or hobby, that there's a lot of misconceptions that Joe Q public has about it. Like actual law enforcement work is not like CSI. Actual martial arts is not quite like what you see in the movies. That by studying it and really going into it, you get to discover a lot of stuff, and that stuff is not quite what it seems. And everybody will agree to this. Now, I'll say very few people have really studied and investigated their own internal experience. When they have, they've usually done babble, meaning that they're telling stories and theories about who's to blame, right, for their predicaments. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actual investigations into the illusory nature of thought. Very few people have done that. Now, you can be sure that if you really begin to investigate experience, you'll get to discover that a lot of stuff that seemed a particular way is not quite that way when you start to take a look at it. That's what we're going to do in this type of work. Now, I really like these frames because A, I think they're very accurate, way more accurate than a so-called mental illness frame. And it's about learning, it's about curiosity, it's about playfulness, it's about discovery, right? Novelty. And of course, you don't treat a psychological illusion. A psychological illusion, per definition, is something that, for the most part, either seems to disappear or is revealed to be something quite different when you do a thorough investigation of it. So you don't treat a psychological illusion, you investigate it so that you can see that what you thought was there is not quite there in the way that you thought it was. Now, this is the common denominator of all people's unnecessary psychological suffering. So if this particular framework resonates with you, if this makes sense to you, then my next psychological illusion model seminar is in Denmark, in Copenhagen, in January 2020. It's January 18th till the 20th. It's a 2-day basic psychological illusion model training, and there's a 1-day deep dive training. And it's all about thought experiments and helping yourself and clients see through the psychological illusions that our unnecessary suffering emerges out of. Now, for the last day, the deep dive, I'll say this. The only time you ever really suffer with thoughts is when they look like a self, is when the thoughts look like you, when it looks as if you are identical to the voice in the head. That's the only time you really suffer. Now, this sense of being the author of your experience, this sense of being a entity like self that all your experience seems to revolve around, which is the basis for unnecessary psychological suffering, is an illusion. It's an illusion. So I'm going to teach you how you can see through that illusion. In my experience, for the last 22 years as an agent of change, it's the most profound and the most useful thing you can do with anyone, in my experience. So if this resonates with you, go to changework.events. So changework.events. Or I may have screwed up on that address. So if it doesn't quite work, go to provocativehypnosis.com. Take a look at the seminar page, and you'll see the address there for the seminar in Denmark. So it's in Copenhagen, January 18th till the 20th. Go to provocativehypnosis.com. Take a look at the seminar page. You'll see the dates. You'll see the actual web page to go to. I think I may have screwed that one up. Anyways, hope this resonates. Hope this is useful. Till next time, enjoy.